General Motors had introduced its new family car, the Commodore, in 1978. And in the following year, the car entered motorsport, but not on the racetrack. The Holden dealer team started 3 cars in the 20,000-kilometre Round Australia Repco Reliability Trial. The result was a stunning success for Holden and HDT. In a huge field, their cars finished 1, 2, 3, with that man, Brock, leading the way.
When people ask me what is my most indelibly imprinted memory of motorsport, it is without any shadow of doubt the 79 Repco Reliability Round Australia Trial. It was the single most difficult, challenging motoring event you could imagine. Debut of the Commodore in competition, bleak times out there in the motoring industry. John Loveridge, who the successor to John Bagshaw, decided that he'd have to wipe all the doom and gloom off the pages, and there was an energy crisis type issue going on, and put some excitement and fun back into the whole world of how people viewed motoring. And so the decision was made to run the Commodore. That in itself was a gutsy decision. I remember being at Lang Lang one day with the Tiranas putting on a Holden dealer team day. I think we might have had some Geminis there that George was preparing too for rallies at the time. And I drove a prototype mule Commodore. One of the engineers had it. He said, take it for a drive around here, Brocky, and put it over that, the dirt road around the back of the ride and handling track. And I did. And it was just stunning over those yumps and that. I thought, my God. I came in, I pulled up next to George. I said, George, get in. This is our next rally car. This is the one for the Round Australia trial. We're going to talk Holden into it. And of course, this is a long time before the trial actually began. We drove her in the back there, and he said, this is fantastic. So we came back in then and said to Holden, we've got to use this car in the Round Australia trial. It'll be awesome. And that's where the seed was planted, I guess, at that time. And then, of course, as it unfolded, Holden said, let's get behind this and really make it work. George was just fantastic when it came attention to detail and the vision of how logistically he was going to handle the whole thing. His ability is just, second to none. I don't think I've ever seen any event of that magnitude organised to a greater detail than George. He'd sit there plotting and scheming. He'd have all these graphs and pencils and notes and everything else, and an army of dedicated people around him. When you consider the cars went out there with their debut motorsport event, they finished 1, 2, 3 outright. People thought it was almost orchestrated. There were rumours abounding that Peter Brock called helicopters to get him from A to B at different times, so he was, freshened up for the next stage. I thought, I only wish I was wiped out. 14 days, 21,000 kilometres. I was just a skeleton at the end of that, but I had the sniff of victory around about Darwin, and I thought, well, I can win this. I'd learnt this rally stuff. I'd had half a lap of Australia to sort of figure it out. And once I got to that stage, I thought, I'm just so focused on doing it. I sleep deprivation, etc. I just did it purely on adrenaline. Great result though, because that established Commodore as a really reliable, strong car for Australian conditions, particularly as it had a McPherson stroke front end. And that was, of course, a controversial issue in those earlier days about, was it going to be strong enough? Did this car have the strength of the good old Kingswood? Well, it proved it in spades. I remember coming out up the Birdsville track there at one stage, middle of the night, and came around a curve. I was probably doing about 170, 190 clicks, wound up, in top gear. And it went over a yump, which middle of the night you really couldn't see it. It was a bit of a spoon drain, I guess, and it took off, and it went along for what seemed an eternity on its bull bar, and the bull bar didn't quite dig in. It just sat there, and it eventually just landed back on the wheels and started jumping again. And it jumped so hard and so high and so landed so badly that we thought that was the end of the rally. And I remember putting it into neutral and giving it a few revs. Couldn't hear the fan hitting anything. Put it in the gear, went through the gears, and the gearbox seemed okay. Put it in the first, drove off through the salt bush back on the road, brr, brr, LX1 motor, you know, ripping along, and forgot about it until I was standing at a service point where a lot of press were, and well, the press came out and said, "What's this ripple in the roof just above the driver's head?" If you look at the car nowadays, it's still there, the same one. And I said, "Oh, you wouldn't believe that," I said. I was standing there and this Ford guy came up and said, "God, you're in front, Brocky, bloody Brocky." And he bashed the roof so hard with his fist. Look at the dent he put in it. That's just a Ford executive who can dirty on us Holden blokes.